The air in the congressional chamber felt electric. Cameras lined the back wall, their red lights glowing like watchful eyes. Reporters packed every available seat, notebooks open, phones ready. Outside, protesters waved signs, some supporting innovation, others demanding accountability. But inside, all attention fixed on two figures seated across from each other at the long mahoral table. Elon Musk sat relaxed, almost bored, scrolling occasionally through his phone. He'd testified before Congress dozens of times. This was routine. Another performance for politicians who, in his view, understood nothing about the future he was building. Across from him, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett arranged a stack of folders with methodical precision. Her expression was unreadable, calm, focused, patient. She didn't look at Musk. Not yet. The chairman's gavel struck once. The committee recognizes Congresswoman Crockett from Texas for questioning. She looked up then, and something in the room shifted. Musk noticed it too. His fingers stopped scrolling. He set the phone down, a faint smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. He'd heard about Crockett, the civil rights lawyer turned congresswoman, sharp but inexperienced in tech policy. This would be easy. What happened over the next 47 minutes would not be easy. It would be devastating. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from Silicon Valley money or Ivy League tech labs. She came from Dallas, from courtrooms where the stakes were life and liberty, from a world where words had to be precise because people's futures depended on them. As a public defender, she'd learned to dismantle cases brick by brick, to find the contradictions in testimony, to stay calm when opponents tried to rattle her. She'd defended the powerless against systems designed to crush them. And she'd won more often than anyone expected. When she entered Congress, colleagues underestimated her. Young, black, from Texas, they assumed she'd be another progressive voice without substance. They were wrong. Crockett joined the House Oversight Committee and did something unusual. She studied. Not just talking points or headlines, but the actual mechanics of technology policy, corporate finance, lobbying disclosure forms. She spent late nights reading through subsidy records and regulatory filings that made other members' eyes glaze over. She didn't do cable news hits or viral Twitter takedowns. She prepared. Elon Musk, meanwhile, had become something more than a CEO. He was a cultural icon, a living myth. The man who'd send humanity to Mars, who'd revolutionize transportation, who'd fight for free speech against government censorship. His companies employed hundreds of thousands. His tweets moved markets. His vision shaped how millions thought about the future. But lately, that vision had become increasingly political. Musk had begun framing himself as a warrior against government overreach, a defender of innovation against bureaucratic tyranny. He testified regularly, always with the same message. Regulations kill progress. Government is the problem. Entrepreneurs like him are the solution. It was a compelling narrative. It was also, Crockett had discovered, fundamentally dishonest. For 6 months, she and her small team had been building something, a case so airtight, so comprehensively documented that it couldn't be dismissed or spun away. They'd filed Freedom of Information requests, analyzed government contracts, tracked subsidy payments, and cross-referenced them with Musk's public statements. What they found shocked even her seasoned staff. The hearing had been called to discuss technology regulation and free speech, Musk's favorite topics. He'd been invited as the star witness, the voice of innovation. Other committee members had already questioned him, mostly lobbing softball inquiries or using their time to praise his companies. Then it was Crockett's turn. Musk had been performing brilliantly. For 90 minutes he'd charmed, deflected, and dominated. When a Maryland congressman asked about content moderation on X, Musk delivered a passionate speech about the sanctity of free expression. When a California representative questioned his company's environmental record, he pivoted smoothly to Tesla's emission reductions. He spoke in the language of visionaries, big ideas, inspiring futures, technological destiny. and he did it with the casual confidence of someone who knew he was smarter than everyone in the room. Representative Dawson from Kentucky had just finished thanking Musk for defending American innovation against the regulatory state when the chairman turned to Crockett. "Congresswoman, you have 15 minutes. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." Her voice was steady, professional, unremarkable. "Mr. Musk, I appreciate you being here today." Musk nodded graciously. "Happy to be here, Congresswoman." "You've spoken eloquently about freedom. Freedom to innovate. Freedom from government interference. It's compelling rhetoric." "It's not rhetoric," Musk interrupted smoothly. "It's principle. Government doesn't build the future. Entrepreneurs do." Several committee members nodded approvingly. Crockett didn't react. She simply opened the first folder. "I'd like to examine that principle through the lens of your company's actual relationship with the government you say inhibits innovation." She looked up. "Is that fair?" Musk spread his hands. "Of course, I have nothing to hide." "Excellent." She slid a document toward him. "This is a compilation of federal contracts, subsidies, tax credits, and grants awarded to your companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and related entities, between 2010 and 2024. The total comes to $17.3 billion in direct government support." The number hung in the air. Musk barely glanced at the paper. "Those are standard industry incentives available to any company meeting eligibility requirements. That's how the system works." "I agree, that's how the system works," Crockett said calmly. "But let's be precise about what we're discussing. This isn't tax policy affecting all businesses equally. These are targeted programs, electric vehicle subsidies, renewable energy grants, NASA contracts negotiated with specific terms that your companies actively lobbied to shape and access." "Every company lobbies," Musk countered. "That's legal. That's democracy." "Absolutely," Crockett agreed. "What's interesting is the contrast between your public statements and your private actions. For example," she produced another document. "This is a transcript from your interview with Joe Rogan 8 months ago. You stated, and I quote, 'The government is fundamentally inefficient. Every dollar they control is a dollar wasted. We need to cut federal spending by at least 50%. Musk nodded. "I stand by that." "Do you also stand by this?" She displayed an email on the screen behind her, dated 2 weeks after that podcast. "This is correspondence from your head of government affairs to the Department of Energy, requesting an expedited review of a $2.1 billion loan guarantee for Tesla's battery facilities, funded by the very government spending you publicly called wasteful." The room stirred. Reporters leaned forward. Musk's expression hardened slightly. "Congresswoman, you're cherry-picking isolated incidents to create a false narrative." "Then let's look at the full picture," Crockett said, her tone unchanged. "Exhibit C." Her aide distributed a thick packet to all committee members. The screens behind her filled with charts showing SpaceX's NASA contracts over time, correlated with Musk's public statements about government space programs. In 2014, you testified before the Senate that NASA had become bloated and inefficient, arguing for privatization. Yet that same year, SpaceX was actively negotiating a $2.6 billion contract with NASA, which you secured 3 months later. "Privatization is the solution," Musk insisted. "We deliver results at a fraction of NASA's cost." "I'm not disputing your efficiency, Mr. Musk. I'm questioning your consistency. Because while you publicly advocate for cutting NASA's budget, your company simultaneously depends on NASA contracts for approximately 60% of SpaceX's revenue." She let that sink in before continuing. "You've built a public persona as someone fighting against government dependence, but your company's financial models are built on government dependence. That's not innovation despite government. That's innovation because of government." Musk leaned forward, his famous charm giving way to irritation. "Congresswoman, with all due respect, you don't understand how technology development works. These partnerships are necessary transitional phases. I understand perfectly how they work, Mr. Musk. I've spent 6 months studying your company's financial disclosures, regulatory filings, and internal communications. Her voice remained calm, almost gentle. What I'm struggling to understand is why you publicly attack the very institutions that have enabled your success. I'm not attacking institutions, Musk shot back. I'm criticizing inefficiency and overreach. Then let's talk about overreach, Crockett said, opening another folder. This is particularly interesting. The document she revealed was labeled Strategic Regulatory Positioning Plan, Q4 2023. Mr. Musk, are you familiar with this report? Musk glanced at it, and for the first time, his confidence wavered. My companies generate thousands of internal documents. This one was authored by your head of regulatory affairs and distributed to your executive leadership team, Crockett interrupted, including you. Your signature is on page 47, approving the budget allocation. She directed everyone's attention to the screen, where key passages were highlighted. I'll read the executive summary. Our regulatory strategy focuses on 3 objectives. First, secure favorable treatment through strategic agency relationships. Second, limit competitor access to equivalent incentives. Third, position CEOs' public advocacy to create political pressure for regulatory frameworks advantageous to our market position. The room erupted in whispers. Musk's attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. Musk shook his head, jaw tight. Congresswoman, that document describes standard corporate planning. It describes regulatory capture, Mr. Musk, Crockett said, her voice now carrying an edge. The very thing you've accused others of doing. Let me read from page 12. Leverage CEO's platform to frame government oversight as innovation threat while simultaneously maximizing government dependency. She looked up directly into his eyes. Those are your words from your strategy document, describing a deliberate effort to manipulate public perception while extracting maximum government benefit. This isn't about innovation. This is about having it both ways, attacking government publicly while capturing it privately. Representative Dawson, who'd praised Musk earlier, removed his glasses, studying the documents with visible concern. Congresswoman, may I interrupt? Of course, Mr. Chairman. Dawson looked at Musk. Sir, I've supported reducing regulatory burdens on your industries. But if these documents accurately represent your company's strategy, I'm deeply troubled. Are you using public advocacy as cover while pursuing the exact regulatory manipulation you claim to oppose? Musk's face flushed. Congressman, every corporation. Please answer the question directly, Dawson said, his earlier warmth gone. Musk hesitated. We operate in a complex regulatory environment. Our public policy positions reflect our principles. Our business strategies reflect practical realities. There's no contradiction. There's absolutely a contradiction, Crockett interjected. And it gets worse. Exhibit E. The new document showed financial modeling from Tesla's Strategic Planning Division. This analysis, prepared by your CFO's office, projects Tesla's profitability under different scenarios. The section titled Government Support Sensitivity Analysis is revealing. It shows that without federal subsidies and regulatory credits, Tesla's cumulative profits from 2018 to 2023 would have been negative $2.7 billion. The number detonated like a bomb. Your company, which you've positioned as a triumph of free market innovation, has been dependent on government support not just for growth, but for basic profitability. And this internal analysis was completed just months before you testified to a Senate committee that electric vehicle subsidies were no longer necessary and should be eliminated. Even Musk's supporters on the committee looked stunned. Representative Chen from California, a Tesla owner and longtime Musk defender, spoke up. Mr. Musk, I've championed your companies as proof that we can build a sustainable future through innovation. But if your own financial models show you needed these programs to survive while you publicly argued for their elimination, that's not just inconsistent. That's potentially fraudulent testimony. The word fraudulent echoed in the chamber. Musk's attorney stood. Mr. Chairman, we object to that characterization. Your objection is noted, the chairman said curtly. Mr. Musk, please respond to the Congresswoman's evidence. Musk sat back, visibly rattled. When he spoke, his voice had lost its assured rhythm. These documents are being taken out of context. Business planning involves scenario analysis that doesn't necessarily reflect policy positions. Mr. Musk, Crockett's voice cut through his explanation like a scalpel. I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I'd appreciate a direct answer. She paused, letting the room fall completely silent. Do you believe your companies could have achieved their current success without government subsidies, contracts, and regulatory support? The question hung there, unavoidable. Musk opened his mouth, closed it, started again. Innovation always involves... Yes or no, Mr. Musk? Could you have built these companies without government support? The pause stretched. Every camera focused on his face. No, he finally said, so quietly some had to lean forward to hear. Not at the scale we achieved, not in the time frame. It was the most honest sentence he'd spoken all day. Crockett nodded slowly. Thank you for that admission. So government wasn't the obstacle to your success. Government was the foundation of it. She gathered her papers as the committee members sat in stunned silence. I'm not suggesting government support was wrong, Mr. Musk. Public-private partnerships drive innovation in every major industry. What's wrong is building a fortune on government support while simultaneously campaigning to dismantle the programs that made it possible. What's wrong is using your platform to attack the very institutions your success depends on. What's wrong is dishonesty. She looked around the chamber. America deserves innovators. But we also deserve innovators who tell the truth about how innovation actually happens. Not through lone geniuses fighting government oppression, but through collaboration between public investment and private enterprise. That's the real story. That's the honest story. She closed her final folder. Thank you for your time, Mr. Musk. I yield back. The hearing continued for another hour, but nothing else mattered. Musk's remaining testimony was defensive, halting, diminished. Other committee members, emboldened by Crockett's revelations, pressed harder than they'd dared before. By the time the session ended, Musk looked exhausted, stripped of the mythic aura he'd carried into the room. But the real explosion happened online. Within 20 minutes, Dr. Crockett receipts was trending nationwide. The clip of her asking, "Yes or no, Mr. Musk?" followed by his defeated "no," went viral across every platform, racking up 40 million views before sunset. Tesla stock dropped 9.4% in after-hours trading. SpaceX's private valuation took an immediate hit in secondary markets. More significantly, institutional investors began asking uncomfortable questions about the sustainability of business models built on government relationships the CEO was actively undermining. The media recalibration was swift and brutal. The Wall Street Journal's headline, "The Myth of Musk: How Government Built a Billionaire." Forbes, Crockett exposes tech's great contradiction. Even conservative outlets couldn't defend the contradictions. The National Review ran an editorial titled, "When Principle Meets Profit, Musk's Credibility Crisis." But it wasn't just media. The response within Silicon Valley itself was seismic. 3 days after the hearing, venture capitalist Mark Andreessen, a libertarian hardliner and Musk ally, published a surprisingly introspective essay. The Crockett hearing forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about our industry's creation myth, he wrote. We've told ourselves we built these companies despite government, when the reality is we built them because of strategic government partnership. It's time for intellectual honesty. Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, tweeted, Crockett's questioning was a masterclass in preparation meeting power. Whether you agree with her politics or not, that's what accountability looks like. Even within Musk's own companies, employees began speaking out anonymously. A SpaceX engineer told The Verge, "We all knew the public messaging didn't match internal reality. Leadership would tell us to emphasize government inefficiency in press materials while simultaneously celebrating every NASA contract win. It was exhausting maintaining the cognitive dissonance." A former Tesla government affairs director gave a rare interview to Bloomberg. Elon genuinely believes in reducing regulation until it affects his companies. Then, suddenly, every rule is reasonable and necessary. The strategy was always to secure advantages for us while limiting them for competitors, then frame it as principled opposition to big government. The political ramifications moved just as quickly. Senator James Wilford from Michigan, who'd enthusiastically supported Musk's companies as examples of American innovation, held a press conference announcing a comprehensive review of corporate subsidy programs. "I've voted for billions in electric vehicle incentives based on promises about reducing government dependence," Wilford said, visibly angry. "If Congresswoman Crockett's evidence is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt her preparation, then companies have been gaming these systems while publicly advocating against them. That's unacceptable." A bipartisan group of senators announced they were drafting the Public Investment Transparency Act, requiring any company receiving over $100 million in federal support to disclose that relationship clearly in public statements and advertising. Representative Ocasio-Cortez, often at odds with Crockett on strategy, praised her colleague's approach. "This is how you hold power accountable, not with slogans but with receipts. Jasmine did her homework, and it showed." Perhaps most surprisingly, 2 weeks after the hearing, Musk himself did something nearly unprecedented. He acknowledged error, not through a tweet or casual interview, but through a formal statement released by all three companies simultaneously. "After reflecting on Congresswoman Crockett's questioning, I recognize that my public statements have not fully acknowledged the role government support has played in our company's growth," it began. "While I remain committed to reducing unnecessary regulation and increasing efficiency, it was wrong to frame our success as occurring despite government rather than, in many cases, because of strategic public-private partnership. Moving forward, we commit to greater transparency about our government relationships and more constructive engagement with oversight." Tech journalists were stunned. "In 15 years covering Musk, I've never seen anything like this," wrote Kara Swisher. "Crockett didn't just win the hearing. She changed the conversation." 6 months later, Jasmine Crockett stood in a Georgetown University lecture hall delivering the annual Public Service Leadership Address. "People have asked me if I was nervous confronting one of the world's most powerful people," she said to the packed audience. "The truth is, I wasn't confronting a person. I was confronting a dishonest narrative." She paused, scanning the crowd of students, policymakers, and journalists. "For too long, we've accepted a story about innovation that's fundamentally incomplete. The myth of the lone genius, battling government oppression, succeeding through pure vision and will. It's compelling. It's cinematic. It's also largely false." She clicked to a slide showing infrastructure investment, research grants, and regulatory frameworks. Real innovation happens at the intersection of public investment and private enterprise. The Internet was built on government research. GPS came from military funding. The algorithms powering artificial intelligence emerged from publicly funded university labs. This isn't socialism. This is how advanced economies have always worked. Another slide. A photo from the hearing. Crockett looking directly at Musk across the table. What bothered me wasn't that Elon Musk's companies received government support. It was that he built an empire on that support while campaigning to dismantle it for everyone else. That's not principled opposition to big government. That's pulling up the ladder behind you. She advanced to her final slide. A simple question in white text on black background. Who benefits when we forget how success really happens? When we accept the myth that innovation happens despite government, we make it easier to cut the programs that create the next generation of innovators. We justify inequality as meritocracy. We forget that success, real success, is built on foundations we create together. The applause was sustained, heartfelt. In the months that followed, Crockett's influence only grew. The Public Investment Transparency Act passed with unexpected bipartisan support. Harvard and Stanford both developed case studies on the hearing, using it to teach corporate accountability and effective government oversight. Most significantly, the conversation around tech regulation shifted from "should government interfere" to "how do we ensure honest partnership?" Perhaps the greatest validation came from an unexpected source. At a Code Conference keynote 1 year after the hearing, Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, addressed the tech industry directly. "We owe Jasmine Crockett a debt for saying what needed to be said. The relationship between innovation and government has always been collaborative. Pretending otherwise doesn't make us principled. It makes us dishonest. The best thing our industry can do is embrace transparency about where we came from and who helped us get here." The tech leaders in attendance, many of whom had privately criticized Crockett's questioning, stood and applauded. On a humid evening in Dallas, back in her district, Crockett sat in a community meeting answering questions about healthcare policy and infrastructure funding, the unglamorous work that actually shapes people's lives. A young woman in the back raised her hand. "Congresswoman, you're famous now for that Elon Musk hearing. Do you think you'll be remembered for that moment?" Crockett smiled. "I hope I'm remembered for being prepared, for doing the work, for believing that in a democracy, no one, no matter how powerful, how wealthy, or how famous, is above accountability." She gathered her notes, the same careful, methodical way she'd organized her folders that day in Congress. "The truth is, that hearing wasn't about me or Elon Musk. It was about a simple idea. Words should match actions. Public statements should reflect private strategies, and success should be acknowledged honestly. Those principles don't make viral moments, but they make functioning democracies." The conversation about innovation, government, and accountability continues. The balance between supporting entrepreneurs and ensuring honesty remains delicate. But because one Congresswoman decided that preparation mattered more than performance, and truth mattered more than theater, that conversation is at least happening honestly. If this story reminded you why accountability matters, why preparation beats performance, and why substance outlasts spectacle, consider subscribing. Because democracy only works when we remember that power, all power, must answer to the people. The truth always deserves witnesses.